Yeah, speaking of movies, with daring chases and the need for momentum and
Need for
movement.
speed. Car speed, that is.
Is that just going to be your thing? You just point to the camera whenever you make a reference?
Absolutely. That was Lisa Simpson from The Sims Hit and Run, which we talked about last week.
Right. Speaking of movies with intense chases and, high stakes, we're talking about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers today, which we just watched before recording this. What else are we talking about, David?
I want to talk about Earthbound.
Yeah.
Because I just beat it last night.
And we talked about that on the first podcast episode a while back about how you were kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah. And then we're talking about Def Leppard because they just dropped an album like 2 days ago.
Yeah, and I think at some point we were planning on talking about them anyway because we knew it was coming out, and so we're going to do kind of a retrospective looking back on what the band kind of means to us, and very similar to what we did with Metallica and Trivium and everything. But first, we're going to talk about what's probably freshest on your mind, because Def Leppard is freshest on my mind because it was my first time listening to the album. But Chip and Dale.
Yeah.
It wasn't a show that I necessarily grew up with. I ended up finding out because after the movie is over on Disney Plus, they just redirect you to the actual show. I think it came out in '89. So, it wasn't even really new when we were kids. I think the last episode aired before we were born. So, the only way that we would have really seen it was if it was, syndicated or if it was, a rerun on, Disney XD or Disney Channel. And even then, when we were kids old enough to remember any of that, we would have been, it would have been, 99. And at that point, I was already deep into SpongeBob and, Pokemon and all that.
Yeah, definitely never seen anything about these two.
No. I mean, and I had only seen Chip and Dale. I remember they played a big part in Kingdom Hearts because they kind of help you build your gummy ship and all that. But when I saw that this movie was being released, I was very skeptical at first. I was like, oh, it's just another kids release on Disney Plus. And then I saw that Andy Samberg and John Mulaney were playing the titular chipmunks. And then I started to be a little bit more interested. And then I saw the trailer, and from the looks of the trailer, it reminded me a lot of Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam in that.
Yeah, like these half animated, half real life sort of hybrid movies.
And what's cool about the movie is that throughout the entirety of the movie, not only do you see, half hybrid, real life and, 2D animated characters, you see 3D characters, you see claymation characters, you see puppets, you see Muppets. So it's all of these different forms of animation that are being celebrated in this movie. And then I ended up watching it on a whim because I was over at my parents' place and I was like, I want to watch the new Rescue Rangers movie. And my mom and sister were like, oh, okay. And the first time I watched it, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the Rescue Rangers movie when I first saw it. Granted, it kind of plays into my sense of humor really well, which is just dumb, absurd, silly stuff. And the fact that, 2/3 of the Lonely Island are involved in the making of this movie. One of, Akiva Kiev, he directed the movie, and then, Andy Samberg starred in the movie. And also John Mulaney being in the movie. I don't know. I feel like the writing in this one was very witty, and it was very self-referential, and the actual use of the characters that show up in the movie it's handled really well. So I overall enjoyed it. But I want to hear what you think because this is your first time seeing it. And we have not talked about it since we finished watching it.
All half hour ago. Yeah. It was solid.
Yeah.
It was because at some part of me is it's just kind of cameo central.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But then it's also really fun at the same time.
Yeah.
It's I don't care because some people are like that, especially with Doctor Strange 2 or Spider-Man No Way Home was they're worried just gonna be, oh look, it's that guy, oh it's this guy.
Yeah.
That's all you got to see, and we don't need to make an actual movie around it. But I mean they did. Couple of moments got me to chuckle.
Yeah.
I went in. I thought they were gonna be chipmunk voices because I don't remember if they were always like that. Are they usually
Yes. Yeah, Chip and Dale are always using their high-pitched voices,
So
which
I was worried because I hate that shit.
yeah,
Like Alvin and the Chipmunks come straight from hell. So I was worried that was going to piss me off. And then I heard John Mulaney's voice. I was like, okay, I'm safe.
I thought you were gonna be hooked the minute that you heard a Tenacious D song, because I was like,
that too.
yeah, because when I watched it and I heard Jack Black, I was like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah, they bust out Friendship.
Yeah,
which it says shit in it, but like it's they obviously altered the lyrics
right
in a weird way. Because if you know the song and you hear like the remix, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and they play it in the background during like a narration from Dale. But yeah, it was just an unexpected music, like in universe, like use of a song. I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting that they would pick it, because no kid would appreciate hearing a Tenacious D song in a kid's movie.
Yeah.
So that's the moment that I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be more interesting than I thought. Like aside from just the animation styles clashing and everything. And there are a couple of jokes in there, like Chip specifically uses language that I wouldn't expect. Like he at one part says like, "What's that godforsaken smell?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fun." And then there's a section where him and Dale have to rap out of a situation, and Dale starts rapping, and then Chip goes like, "Oh, so I'm in hell now. That's this sucks." But yeah, no, I mean, you could definitely tell like John Mulaney's sense of humor from his stand-up like bleeds through into this performance. And Andy Samberg, this is not his first time doing voice stuff either. Like he was the main character in the Storks movie, which I really like, and he voices the idiot from Hotel Transylvania, the main guy Johnny. So he's no stranger to animation, but both of them gave a really good performance. I felt like the friendship thing was going to be a little bit cheesy, but no, towards the end, like you can tell that these characters are really good friends, and that was cool. Even if the sacrifice scene at the end was played a little like it happens really quickly and then it's kind of over. I don't know. I do appreciate. So do you know the trope of oh god, what is it called? Chekhov's gun?
No idea.
So Chekhov's gun is like a playwriting technique. I don't even know if I would call it a technique, but it basically states that if you introduce an object or a theme or a motive in the first act of a play, it has to show up in the second end. And the name comes from a play that I think, if Chekhov was a playwright, this might have come from one of his plays, but in the first act, there's a gun hanging on the wall. So in that specific instance, the rule dictates if you put a gun on the wall during a play, it has to be used in the second act. So it's this story writing thing that kind of helps you trim the fat of your story writing and your ability to create atmosphere and characters. Because there's a lot of instances where the writers in this movie will introduce a joke or a plot line or whatever in the first like half hour that come up in the last act of the movie, like Monterey Jack wears this cologne that ends up being really important towards the end of the movie. And there's a joke that Chip makes about how all cartoons, when they get rebooted, they have to start rapping, and then that happens in this movie too. So it's like little stuff like that you pick up on that I really appreciate. And you can tell the writers took this story like seriously, but at the same time like they wanted to make it fun, but they didn't want to dumb it down for kids. So I appreciate that. So yeah, there were a couple of really good moments there. There was a moment that I remember really laughing hard at, and I was trying to pay attention to what you were laughing at too, and like chuckling at. But they use a lot of like cartoon tropes in this movie, and they kind of explain, like, one of the things that I really appreciated was the actual conflict of the movie. There's a process that is done to old cartoon characters in this world called bootlegging. And if anyone's familiar with any sort of like commentary YouTuber that creates videos on like bootleg animation movies, you're 100% familiar with this kind of concept where like a classic cartoon character like Flounder from The Little Mermaid, he'll get kidnapped because he owes this gang money, and then they get sent overseas to be like made into like bootleg movies of the movies they come from. So like in this case, it's like the small like water lady instead of the Little Mermaid, and like Flounder looks different, and there's like reconstructive surgery that is done to these characters, and I thought that was a really funny use of like animation lingo and stuff. There's also like in California, there's the Valley, but in this movie, it's the Uncanny Valley, and the only people that live there are like cartoon characters that are supposed to look real, but you know, there's a little thing. And then Seth Rogen plays like a Viking. He plays a Viking that lives in the Uncanny Valley, and it's just like it's his face, but he's never looking at you. That was a good bit. And then, you know, the trope with like old cartoon characters getting hit on the head and like birds show up.
That was the single best part of the movie. Because when it was happening, because there was like a thing above.
Yeah.
And I thought they were trying to hit the other one like up there.
Uh-huh.
And they hits him on the head, and I was like, what the hell's he doing? And then the second time he hit him, it was like, where are they? I was like, oh shit, they're waiting for like the bird things to fly overhead.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts. just fucking bird in the bed.
Yeah.
Gets a phone call. Oh man.
And his wife is like, come on, Harold, it's late. And then he's like, no, it's my job. And he gets out of bed.
Like, don't nag me right now.
Yeah, and he gets ready to to go just fly above this character, like Chip's head or Dale's head. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, and the way that they use the cameos, I think, some of them, like they show, like, so this is a Disney movie, but there are characters that show up here that are not owned by Disney. That
Randy from South Park.
Randy Marsh shows up in the German spa, and he's hanging out next to two pigs, and one of the pigs is like, yeah, I mean, I get the kids on the weekend, but it's not the same. Just lines like that. That's like, oh, it's, yeah, they use like, Foghorn Leghorn shows up on like a box of frozen food. Paul Rudd shows up. I mean, it's not like he's a property owned by Disney, but he's at like a convention basically, and he's signing stuff as Ant-Man. Because the joke is like, yeah, you know, the original name for the movie was Ant-Man, and I had the power to charm aunts. So funny how that worked out. And Paul Rudd's just in the, and oh man, it's so funny because like he's in on the joke. That's the best. I love Paul Rudd so much. Yeah. You probably did, like, I didn't catch it the first time. Apparently Naruto is in this movie from a couple episodes ago, and it's at the very end. Spoilers for Rescue Rangers. But it's at the very end where they open up the silo, or not the silo, but like, you know, on a docking, like a ship dock, you know, the big like containers, like the freight containers that like ships will carry. There are a bunch of bootlegged characters being hidden in one of them, and one of the characters walking, like all of the characters that escape from this silo look like other cartoon characters. So you see a parody of like Patrick Star, you see a parody of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb, and then there's an old man in an orange jumpsuit with like the hidden leaf band on his forehead, but he's got a mustache and like old like white hair. It's Naruto because he's got like the blue sandals and everything, and like he's got like the puffy, you know, thing around his neck. And you only catch him for a second, but, you know, people were already, like, the weekend the movie came out, they're like, they fucking got Naruto in this? They got Naruto in this movie?
Also, Ugly Sonic was in there a lot.
Ugly Sonic played a lot bigger of a role than I thought he was going to. And he's also voiced by Tim Robinson, who's probably one of the funniest people alive. He does a show on Netflix called I Think You Should Leave, which I honestly want to show you an episode of when this is done, because it's just this really funny, absurd, like Tim and Eric style, like sketch comedy show. It's really good. But he plays Ugly Sonic, and like the whole joke is that like he's at this convention because he's famous for, you know, having ugly teeth. And then he shows up along other like washed up, you know, animation stars with like Dale in the beginning of the movie. But then they come back to him because he has connections at the FBI. because they want to start a show with him where they solve ugly crimes and they have ugly Sonic. So good. It's so good. And apparently they're able to get away with it because by calling him Ugly Sonic the whole time, because it's parody, technically it's their own original character. Whereas like other cameos, they only get permission from the original users to, have them in the background or passing by or whatever. But in this case, apparently they got the literal like CG model from Paramount like before they scrapped it in favor of the new Sonic model. Wow. And they used that. They rigged that for the movie. So yeah, if you love animation, if you love like wacky humor, I honestly might buy this on Blu-ray. Like if they ever come up with like a steelbook of like the Rescue Rangers movie, just because I think it's a fun, it's a short movie too. Like it doesn't feel like it drags on too much. Yeah, and I think it's fun to break out every once in a while. Like if you're having people over, you want to just have something going on in the background. Yeah, Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
It's a rent it.
Yeah, it's a rent it. I think if it's not a rented, it's a very low buy it for me because I enjoyed it. I had fun with it, but it's not groundbreaking or anything.